Hi everyone, and welcome to this part 2 webinar for maps. In the first webinar we looked at how to add maps to the skin. This webinar we're going to look at using the tour map and the map element. But before I start, as always, bit of housekeeping. My name's Martin Hopkins. We'll be joined by Karen later on when we get to the Q&As. Due to some delays, how we normally work is please ask all the questions that you want during the webinar. You can see by this screenshot we've got a Q&A link up here that you can click and type in your questions. When we get to the end and I ask Karen for the questions, at that point we'll stop taking the questions. Right, if everybody's ready, what I'll do is I'll crack on. Right, I've got a project. I'm going to open it up, and what we're going to do here is add floor plans to the tour map. Now here's the tour map button. If I click this, you'll see it opens up. Now you'll see that I've already added the ground floor floor plan, and I've linked it all up. But what I'm going to do is just drag this over to this panel and dock it, just so I can keep the window open. I can see the viewer in the center. And what we're going to do now is add another floor plan. So I'm going to click the green plus button and add floor plan, and then I can choose one. So I'm going to now choose the first floor. Okay, click OK. Now as you can see, we've just added the floor plan. It's got no map pins, it's got no nodes on it whatsoever. And the other thing is, if I click on the properties and make sure I've got the floor plan selected, you'll see that the properties panel is now showing the floor plan properties. So what I'm going to do is just give it a title. So let's just call this first floor. Here we go. I can add tags to this if I wanted to. Now, why would I add a tag? Now, all of my input images have tags. For those that were with us last week, what I did, if I just click the user data, you can see that we've got the tag ground floor for these panos and first floor for these. Basically, if you've got your panoramas into a folder and that folder is called ground and first, you can drag the folders in, and then those particular panoramas get tagged with the folder name. Okay, so if I go back to properties and click the map, so if you didn't do that, what you could do is add a tag to the floor plan. We could have called this first, and as I would have dragged nodes into this, they would then get that tag. So there's a second opportunity of adding tags to your input images. Okay, now I'm not worried about GPS on this one. Basically what we're doing to start with is just showing you how to put floor plans using the tour map and then the map element. We're going to go back and look at GPS and geolocating after this particular exercise. But what I do want to do is jump down to the format. As you can see, we've got JPEG selected. This is actually a PNG with alpha. So if I click on PNG, so I'll get my transparency. The background is going to be white. If I select this, I can set the alpha channel to 0, which would then make the background transparent. For the sake of being able to see this, I'm going to leave it as white, because obviously when I display this on the screen, a black floor plan against a dark panorama is going to be difficult to see. But we'll probably have a look at this as and when we do our first export. Right, so as you can see, the first floor panoramas don't have any warning signs. The warning signs here are telling me that these panoramas don't have in or outgoing hotspots. Now, with the first project we did last week, we had to add the panoramas, add your hotspots, do your linking, and then add the floor plan, and then add all your map pins. With this cuts down the workflow. So if you like a better workflow, because all I have to do now is literally just drag and drop my panos in. So this is the landing one, so I can just drop it there. Okay, if I click it, you'll see that it turns orange. If I select another node, it's blue, so I'll just click it and it's orange. When it's orange, I can click and drag it. If I now do bedroom 2 and drop it in there, if you see, if I click and try and drag that blue map pin, it won't drag. On the Mac, if I click option or press option, on the PC it's alt. If I press and hold that, then I can drag the map pin around. Yeah, so the next one then is going to be landing 2, so let's just put that in. I'm going to do bedroom 1 and then finally bathroom. Okay, now those ones are slightly out, so I'm just going to drag those where I want them. Here we go. If the map is very large or not, you can obviously zoom in and out and to work on it if you want the detail. Okay, so that's my map pins added to the map. Now from this, what I want to do now is link them up, is, if you like, set my hotspots. So if we spin this around, you can see I'm in the landing, and you can also see that the radar beam is pointing in the wrong direction. Now again, with putting the map inside the skin directly, what we had to do was set up the headings using the viewer and the compass heading, and swap in and out of compass and spinning the viewer. With the tour map, you can literally do all of this from the tour map. I can click and drag the radar beam to rotate the room, and then when I press and hold the N key, I can then whiz the radar beam round to get it correct. When I release it, I've now got my heading is now correct. So it's, again, it's much faster to do. So if I select that map pin, whiz the room round to somewhere that I recognize, which is going to be this back wall, I can press the N key, correct the radar beam, and move on. So as you're now correcting the headings in the panoramas is much quicker. Now this is pointing back, so let's go point forward, and we can again correct that. Press the N, press and hold, rotate the radar beam, and then I can move on to the next image. Okay, let's just, now this one's going to be coming back. Again, press hold N, whiz that down. So I'm not necessarily looking to find north, even though we're using the N key, which we would do, we sort of denote for saying it's north. What I'm really just looking for is my radar beam pointing the same way as the panorama. So that's all I want to correct. Right, so once that's done, which should be about there. Now the floor plan is something I knocked up in Photoshop. There wasn't a floor plan for this particular project, so this is why these nodes really don't line up properly in this floor plan, because it's not a proper floor plan. But anyway, we've got this, and now once I've got all my headings set and I'm happy with that, what we can do now is link up the nodes. Now what I'm going to do is select the link option, and we have some various options here, but what I want to do is show you all the various different ways. So if I start with the first node, you can see when I hover over it, I've got this link icon. When I click it and it turns red, you can see I've got this line, and when I click the next node, I create a link both ways. All right, and what I would need to do then is click the link again to disable that. Okay, or if I enable it and then hold down the option key and click it, I can delete it. So click adds it, hold down the option or alt key on the Mac, on the PC, and I can delete it. All right, but I want that there, so let's put that back, and I'll just turn that off. So that's now linking. So I've now just set 2 hotspots, and I've not had to do it within, dragging nodes in or whatever. I'm just doing it using purely the tour map. Now the other way of doing this, and which is probably quicker, is if we select the linking options, we can switch node in link mode. Now what I'm going to do is just remove this, and I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to turn on link mode, and now what happens when I link the nodes up, you can see, oh hang on, that one's already done, wasn't it? Right, so let's turn that off. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to hit the delete key on the keyboard. I'll just start this again because I kept that one linked up. Let's go back to here. So these aren't linked at all, so edit, enter at link mode, and now when we click, when we set the link, it also moves to the next node. So you can just click away until you get to where you want, disconnect link mode, re-enable link mode, and just go to that one node, and then that's all done for you. Right, so yeah, we've got all of those. If we just have a look at the history panel, let's just go back to unlinked nodes. Right, so back, and I'll manually get rid of that one. Right, oh, okay, that was interesting. He says. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. I've probably lost that now, haven't I? Yeah, okay. That's one for Thomas, but never mind. Let's add this second floor plan then. So let's bear with me whilst I do this. So first floor, put that in, redock that. Just quickly add the nodes, which is actually quite good because you can see now how fast this actually is. So here we go. Right, all done. I'll just make that a little bit smaller so I can see the bottom of it. And let's just reposition all of those. Yeah. And activate that. So let's go back to switch nodes in link node. Switch that on. Link, link, link. Disable that one. Enable it there. Link. Disable there. The only thing I obviously haven't done is set my north, but that's okay because what I can show you is if I reset this so I get this node correct. So let's hold down the N key and rotate that there. Okay. Let's have a look at the user data. So let's move this out a little bit more, go to user data, and we can see the north set. Now I'm going to copy this to all nodes because in this particular project, the camera was facing the same way in all of the nodes. So if I now copy that to all the nodes, what's going to happen is, well, obviously we've got a little bit of a, because obviously I set the link in when I hadn't got the headings correct, but you will now see that that all the nodes really will, if I look around now, so point in the correct in the correct directions. So if I click and carry on. Okay, all right. Now obviously what happened there was I've linked all the nodes when I didn't have the heading correct, which I should have done. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of all of those. So what I can hold down the and just remove those like that. Okay, so now when I redo this, they will be nice and straight. There we go. Job done. Right, so that's roughly where we were. What I will do at this point, file save just in case. Right, so that's the first floor and the second floor nodes all linked up and we're good. Right. What I can do is I docked the tour map into the side panel, and what it's done is added a new tab at the bottom. So what I can do is slide that over, because you can have as many panels as you want in one side. In fact, what I could do is set all the panels on one side and just have my viewer to the other side. But that's a different webinar, that one. So we'll leave that at that. Anyway, so I'm going to go to output. I'm going to create the output just to make sure everything's saved. And I've got my hotspots. They should be all working. Now I'm going to go to the skin, which should be blank. And what I'm going to do now is add the map element. Now I know for a fact that the map element is 600 pixels by 1150. Now I'm saying this because that's the size of my map images. All right, so how I tend to work, because I want to keep the same aspect ratio, is I type in the size of the image, then I use this little button here, which is keep aspect ratio, and then I can set the width. So I might want that down to 200 pixels, and then I can set the top anchoring, so top left, so 10 pixels from the left, and then 10 pixels down. So that's all set up. Okay, now let's just close. Actually, no, what we're going to do with this is the map element. By default, the map element will try and show a map. I want it to show a floor plan. So I'm going to select floor plan, and we should see our two floor plans. Now I want it to start with the lower floor plan. Okay, I'm going to keep simple selected, and we have this option here of auto switching. I'll explain that in a second. The radar beam that we will see, you can either see it or not. That's what the checkbox is all about. We can change the color of the radar beam and the size. So let's just save all this and create an output. And there it is. There's our floor plan. The nodes are all selected. You can see I've got my white background. I will show you this because why not? If I go to tour map, Let's go to properties. I can set the alpha channel of the background to 0. That will now make it transparent in the output. So let's just do that. And he says wrong one. Hang on, let me go back to the tour map. Let's go to ground floor. That was it. Let's try ground floor and set that to transparent, shall we? There we go. And now that should be, because it obviously opens showing the ground floor, so that's the one that needed to be transparent. There we go. All right, now the map is an active element. In other words, I can't click and drag through it, but that's fine. What we can do is, if you really wanted to, if the map is quite large, is you can set permeable. And what that will do is, let's just show you, is you can now click and drag through it. But what you can't do now is click these map pins. Now the reason for that is that these are the default map pins and they come with the map element. So when we set the map element to permeable, we can't interact with anything to do with the map. Okay. But what we can do is, if I open up the skin, if I go to the components toolbox, let's just go built-in components, we have a map element map pin. All right, we now last week we showed you a map pin with radar, but this one is clearly stating it's a map element map pin, so it's designed for the map element. So I'm just going to add that to the skin, and here it is, and its name is called map pin. So what I'm going to do is select the map element, scroll down, and clone as marker the map pin. All right, close, save, and let's publish. Have a look, and now what you can see is I've got active map pins because they're now part of the skin and not the map element, and I can actually scroll the pano through that. So that's quite good if your map is quite a size. The other thing which I've done is I've left the map element, I've got its border still switched on. Next time we're in the skin I'll turn that off, but you can see we've got the border. Anyway, this is basically the map, and just to recap, when we went into the map, the tour map, this is how we set up our hotspots. So you can see that, last week's method and this week's method is superior in the fact that you can actually add your nodes into the tour map. You can also do all your linking and add your hotspots. Okay, and as you just saw by me crashing it, was there is a certain order. You add your nodes, you set your headings, then you set your links. If you set your links first, then set the headings, these links won't be straight, and you'll end up with hotspots in the wrong direction, because you're applying hotspots when the panorama thinks it's pointing east when it's pointing north. So that when you correct it, the hotspots will move, and hence why you got these curly lines. All right, so that's just one thing to be aware of. Okay, so that's let's just go back to the output then. And right, so what I want to do here is add a hotspot that will take me to the first floor. So what I'm going to do is, even though I've set the hotspots up in the tour maps, what I'm going to do is manually set a hotspot from the ground floor, which is where I am, into landing 1. So I'm just going to place it here. I'm going to hold down the command key on the PC, and it's the control on command on the Mac and control on the PC to open up the viewing parameter window. So I can select that, hold down the option on the Mac, Alt on the PC, and follow it. And what I'm going to do now is just set another hotspot from landing 1 back down to the hall. Okay, and follow that back down. Right, so if I now publish this or create the output, you'll see that we've got our map pins. We're on the ground floor. When I get into the hall, I've got this hotspot that's taking me to landing 1. When I click this, the floor plan will follow me. All right, now it's gone to this dark color, and any reason, anyone understand why? Well, I'll tell you why. And that's because when I selected, obviously when it crashed and I went through it quickly, I didn't set the format to ping. It was set as a JPEG, so therefore it's gone back to black. And then what I'll do is I'll set the white background back to 255 so we can clearly see it. But that's the reason. So if you do change it and you've got this all black image, if you're using a ping with transparency and you've got the format incorrect, then that's what you're going to get. All right. So that was actually worth showing. Right, okay, so let's just click yes to that. Let's move forward. See, this one's got transparency, but it's a ping, and when I go up, we've now got this one that's now got the background set to 255, so you can now see it, but it's also still a ping image. Okay, and the radar beam is now pointing the right way to see all the nodes. Right, okay, so this is our what we call simple floor plan. You're basically taking an image and we're displaying it in the skin, very similar to, I don't know, an external loader, like you would do a picture of an external loader. We're externally loading the map or the floor plan image into the skin. All right. The other thing is it doesn't require internet access. It can be on a standalone device or a kiosk or something like that. But if you're going to publish this to the internet and it has access, we can actually change this by deselecting simple. All right, so if I select deselect simple floor plan, what we should have now is map controls. If I select that back, you see it's gone. If I select deselect simple, we get map controls and center node and some other little features. Now what happens here is if I close this and save, what you'll see is we've now got a zoom. What's actually happened, because we've deselected simple, and the floor plan itself was actually quite large, because we actually reduced its size, didn't we? We actually took it from its 600 width down to 200 width in the skin. But now we've actually got the floor plan at its full size. And Pano 2 VR has done like what it does with its multi-resolution. It's tiled up the floor plan. So we've now got this zoom going on, which is quite cool. All right, so we've got this zoom, but if I click and go to a different node, we just lose where we are. We don't progress through, we don't see it in the output. So if I go back to the floor plan, all right, I can now select center node, and what that is going to do, let's just generate and export that. What that's going to do, if I zoom in a little bit, as we move, you'll see that the floor plan moves with us, so it can track us, which is quite cool. All right, so that's quite good. The other thing we can do with this is, you saw that we've got those zoom buttons, and it could be that they get in the way. So I can actually deselect map controls. I can actually turn off this auto switching as well of the floor plans. It may be that you want to manually turn or have floor plans and you don't want this auto switching for whatever reason. You can turn it off. As I said, we can turn the radar beam on and off. I'm actually going to change the color of the radar beam, because what we've got is when the node is active, we've got this red pin. So what I'm going to do is click and then press and hold, and I can sample the color of that red pin and change our radar beam to that. And as I said before, the radar beam size is a bit big. I'm going to change that to 75. And let's just see what all of those adjustments look like in an output. Okay, so let's do that. So here we go. We've got a red radar beam with a red pin, and we can move that around. I don't have any zoom buttons. I've got a mouse wheel, which I can't do anything about unless I'm actually on an active element, like because I made the map itself permeable, so I can't drag it. If you're going to start using zoom and you've deselected the simple checkbox, then I would strongly recommend that you deselect permeable, because you're going to want to be able to drag that map around. Okay, so let's just do that, go back. So now you can see if I zoom in by my mouse wheel, I can drag it around and get to where I want to be. Okay, so that's that. Okay, and of course I can go anywhere now in this and use the mouse wheel for sizing. Right, okay, right, but you still might want to zoom this. Okay, so what I want to do is introduce you to some actions we have in the skin for the map element. So let's just grab a text box, stick it to one side, and let's just call this FF for first floor. I'm going to grab another one, stick it underneath it, and let's just call this GF for ground floor. All right. I'm going to select the top text box, hold down the shift key, and select them both, because what I want to do is just line them up. So if we go to Edit, Align Edges, I want to align the left edges, and you can see that those two text boxes now align. Okay, I'm going to select them both. I'm going to set them to have the hand cursor because I want them to be buttons. And what else do I want to do with them? Well, let's change the labels. So this is now going to be my first floor. This is now going to be my ground floor. So let's just change the label on that. Okay, and now what we want to do is give them the actions to change it. So let's select the ground floor, scroll down to the actions, double click to open up the first action. The source is going to be a mouse click. The action is going to be maps. All right, we've got its own, it has its own action heading. And here the first option we get is to change map. Now I've got change, zoom in, zoom out, and zoom to boundaries. But we're at change map, and this wants to select floor plan 01, which is our ground floor. Okay, I can do that. I can now copy this action, select the first floor and paste, and we've got that action in there, and all I need now to do is change that to floor plan 2. So I've now got these two buttons that are now going to swap the floor plan around for me. So I can click close, save. Let's generate the output and see what we got. So here we go, we're at our ground floor. I can switch to the first floor. You know, that's denoted by it's got the white background. And there's back to the first. We can move around. We can still obviously use the hotspots and to move around ourselves, but this now gives us the option, the opportunities to quickly go to whatever floor we want and select. Okay, now of course we did see this when I was selecting these or creating these buttons. Just to add two more text boxes. This one, let's put this zoom in, and we'll call this one zoom out. All right, and actually I like to not have spaces on those. There we go, that's just my preference. And then on the zoom out, what we're going to do then is give it the action of, it's going to be a mouse click. It's going to be a map action, and we are going to zoom in on this particular one, and we're zooming in to map 1. Now that's interesting, map 1. This is what our map element's called, map 1. Now this should sort of say, hang on a second, does that mean we can have more than one map element? Boing, yes we can. We could actually have one displaying a Google map and one displaying a floor plan, as an example. What you can't do is have the single map element display a floor plan and then switch to Google Maps. All right, I'm looking frantically at messages coming from Thomas, and there isn't any, so I'm right in assuming that. I think I did test this out. If you know, basically you can only have it selected to either maps or floor plans, and once you've set it, that's what that map element will cover. So you could actually put two map elements in there. We could have map 1, map 2. Map 2 could be for maps, and map 1 could be for floor plans. So when you add an action to it, you're also targeting which map element you are controlling. So this is zoom into map 1. Again, I'm going to copy that action, select the next text box down, paste it, but instead of zoom in, I want to zoom out. Okay, and we'll just call these, let's just add the text to this. So that was zoom out, and this one will be zoom in. So let's just do that. I'm also getting faster at typing, by the way. Right, anyway, so I'm going to select the first element, hold down shift, select them all, and you can see that all of these are selected, but the dark blue one is my reference element. So again, what I'm going to do is using that reference element is align edges. Let's align left, so that all straightens up. And what I can also do whilst I'm here is edit, distribute, and from top edges. So they should all be spaced out evenly. So that's another little quick tip there. Using the edit menu, you can distribute and align your elements. All right, and I'll select them all. Now you'll notice under hand cursor, it's white. It's highlighted, but it's either not ticked or ticked. The reason being that some of them are not ticked, some of them are. So I can now make sure that they're now all ticked. So when we close, save, let's generate the output. As I hover over these buttons, you will see that they now show the hand cursor, and we can now zoom in and out and do what we want. Here we go. So that's just adding some buttons and whatnot. But if I zoom out, all right, you watch what happens when I hover over the top map pin. Now, what's happening is it's covering the map, like the tooltip where it says bedroom is covering the map pin below it, but it's hiding under the map pin for the bathroom. All right, so that looks a bit messy. So how do we fix that? Right, well, the thing to remember is if you look at this tour browser at the bottom, if you can imagine that if you started with a piece of paper, or you had several pieces of paper, if you laid down the entrance first, when you laid down the hall, that would slightly cover the entrance. If you laid down the kitchen, that covers the hall. If you laid down the cloakroom, that covers the kitchen. So they're put down in order. So the order is the entrance is first. So the bathroom would be the most forward element. Okay. Now, what we've done is if we go back to the skin editor and select the map, we actually have what we call a pin order. Now, at the moment, it's set to tour browser. Oh, let's just get comfortable. Right, okay. So it's set to tour browser, all right? Now, what we can do is change these. So if I was to set that to top to bottom, what it means, what it would mean is that the very top one would be under the next pin down. We don't want that, all right? We want the very top one to cover the next pin. So we're going to select the pin order bottom to top. So we're going to say the bottom pins were set first, so the top pin is going to be the very last one, so it will cover everything. So when we do this, you will see that that's indeed what we get. If we zoom out a little bit more, you'll see that the text box covers everything. If I'd have set the pin order from top to bottom, that would have mean the top one would have been set first, the one below it, so the map pin would have covered that text box as said. Okay, so I think that's quite good there. If you do find that none of these schemes work for you, you can actually go back to the map element. You can actually set it to a browser, and I could quite have easily gone, right, well, okay, on this particular one, I just swap those two around. So the hall now, so the entrance now would cover the hall because that's the first one, okay? But yeah, I don't need to do that. So let's go back. So yeah, you've got this control. It's the same thing with the thumbnail menus as well. The thumbnail menu takes the order of the tour browser. You know, most people like it set so you've got node 1, node 2, node 3. All right, now what's next? Right, the very thing I should have done at the start and didn't is if we go to preferences. Now this is default. My Pano 2 VR for this webinar is set to default. What I really wanted to do is go under advanced and select this show map labels in tour browser and map. All right. Now on this particular project, it's not so bad. We know that where the hall is and we know where the kitchen is and the cloakroom. But if you've got a map and you've got, you know, a few hundred panoramas, how do you know which one goes with what node in the tour browser? So the tour map and tour browser. With that selected and click OK, what's happening now is we get these A, B, C, D, Z's. All right. So if I go back to tour map, which is obviously showing my second floor, you can see now quite easily that there's A for map pin A. If I go to the ground floor, it all changes. You can see now that A is at the top here and this is the entrance. All right. Now what we do is we go uppercase, lowercase, number, and then repeat. Uppercase, lowercase, number. But this will make it easier to identify. The other thing, of course, which again I showed you in the last webinar that we could do to help, is right button click, assign a colour. So ground floor we could give them orange, and then the first floor we could assign a colour to blue. That makes a visual difference in the panels and here as well. All right, so that helps you find the panoramas between the two. Okay, right, what's next? We've talked about floor plans. We've talked about a simple floor plan. All right. We've then selected or we deselected simple, and we're now when you deselect simple, we're using the built-in API, which is the leaflet API. That's the free one, so that's the one that we're using. That's probably not so important, but what I do want to show you here is I've got a tooltip. If we look at the map pin, right, the map pin element that we added, you can see that when it's active, we get this orange one. So if we have a look at this, you'll see that the alpha is set to 0, all right? But the logic is saying when that's in an active node, set it to alpha 1. So that's when we see it, and it'll be the same for this. So it's visible for the blue pin, but if it's in an active node, we set it to alpha 0, so it hides. So on an active node, we see this one; on that one, we don't. Now, if we look at the tooltip here, all right, you can see its width. Now, this has, I say an issue. It hasn't got an issue, but you could have a problem with it. So if I select the map, and I'm going to go back to select a simple map, close, save, and let's have a look. And I want to show you my issue, and my issue is that the tooltip is falling off the edge of the screen. Okay, so how do we do this? Now, this was probably the only advantage from the first map webinar that we did. The first map webinar. Let's go back to that actually, and just to show you map 1 and open it up. Okay, so here is the output. This was what we worked on last week. Basically, when we look at the skin, all right, when we cloned the map pin with the radar, it actually made copies, right? And these copies had their own map pin and own text box. So what we could have done here is selected this text box and manually move it over. Or if it was falling off the bottom of the screen, select that and manually move it up. You know, and yeah, so you could manually move it, and it was easy to do. Now, of course, with the with the project we have at the moment, we're not using clones, we're using the same element. So what we've got to do is use a logic block. Okay, now how we're going to do that is let's have a look. Now the element that I'm interested in, or rather the node I'm interested in, is the storage cupboard. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy its title. All right, and I'm going to go back to the skin, and I'm going to say to this tooltip, here's its position, I'm going to add a expression. All right, so this is it, and I'm going to say if the user data title equals, and paste that in, all right, move it over by 50 pixels. All right, so what does that actually do? All right, well, let's generate and export that. This is what it's going to do. It's moved it over by 50 pixels. There we go. So it's no longer falling off the screen. All right, so if you've got, say here, it doesn't, but if that living room was falling off the bottom and we couldn't see it, all I would do is go back into the tooltip, add another expression. Here we go, and literally do the same thing. So we go placeholders, user data there. So what was this one? Living room. So let's just type that in. This is why I like to copy and paste, because it's quicker. Right, living room, and this time round I want it to come up. So if I say minus 38 pixels, right, so it's coming up, and that should make it come above. Yeah, so all the others below. All right, so I could have done the same thing with the cloakroom and that. Now, obviously, you're probably thinking, well, hang on a second. If I've got loads of these going down the side of the page, it's going to take forever to add lots of expressions with just the naming. What you could do, quite simply, is just tag panoramas saying, you know, I know left or right, and then you could then go into the tooltip and just say if the tag equals left, move it another 30 odd pixels to the right, and if it equals right, move it another 30 odd pixels to the left. So you can bulk do this. So it's not as though you have to do one at a time. I've just shown you this because I can, really, but you can apply this. You can actually use tags or whatever you wish. Right, so I think that really covers the maps. What I want to do now is talk about the geolocating, because this is just maps in a normal project. All right. Now, one of the questions that we get asked is, well, I want to build a tour for Google Maps and also want to export for HTML5. Right. Well, with Google Maps, you've got to do as we've done. All right. You've got to almost build it within the tour map, but we do need to geolocate as well. So what I'm going to do is, if we open up this project. Okay, now none of these have got GPS or anything like that, so let's just reset all the panels. I'm going to do Option 1 or Alt 1 on the PC. That resets all my panels in Pano2VR. And what we need to do is open up the tour map. Now I'm only going to add the first floor because we've seen how to add floor plans, so I'm just going to add the floor plan. So let's do ground open. So there's the ground floor, and we've got this little button here, which is our orientation tool. All right, now I'm just going to make sure that I've got properties selected, which I have. It's the floor plan. These are all the properties for it, but I want to orientate this onto map. So what I'm going to do is select this, and the first thing I need to do, well, I don't need to do, but what helps is measure a distance. If I select that, what this does is when we actually apply this on top of maps, if I don't give it a measurement, it could end up being on maps the size of a country, or it's going to be too small and I can't find it. But if I actually set a distance, it should, let's put this to say 5 meters. I don't think it isn't 5 meters, it's about 4.5, but so it's 5 meters. Right, so that's the width. If I now go back into there and geolocate, I'm actually going to select a satellite view, and I'm going to type in the postcode, which is what is it, 7HY. all right, so here we go, and the house in question, he says, if I can find it, is here. All right, so it's actually in between, it's here. Now I'm still in orientation mode, so if I double click, it adds the floor plan. Because I measured the width of it, it's almost right. I did say 5 meters, and it isn't quite 5 meters, it's about 4.5. So I can reduce its size. I can also rotate it as well if I need to. It just so happens that this is actually pointing north, so I'm going to have no north setting. So I've actually geolocated the map or the floor plan onto maps. Okay, now if I click this button, that stops the orientation going on. And now when I drop, no, actually what I want to do is go to user data, and you can see that this map pin or this node doesn't have any data. I've got nothing set. But as soon as I drag and drop that onto the floor plan, because the floor plan has been geolocated, when I drag and drop a map pin onto it, you'll see it's now picking up its geolocation. So even if you don't have GPS data in your nodes, if you've got a floor plan, or you know where you are, and you can type in a postcode or wherever, some sort of reference, and find where you are, you can actually add the GPS to your nodes via Pano2VR. You don't need any geologgers or anything like that. Anyway, this actually will suffer from the same thing, because this is a new build, so all the nodes are pointing in, like the heading is wrong, but let's not worry about that. You've seen already how I do that. But what I can do now is just add some nodes, and as I add them, let's hold down the Alt or the Option key for the Mac and just put these in. I'm just going to quickly do this. There's the cloakroom down there, and dining room, and storage cupboard, and finally living room. Right, okay, so this is all my map pins added. Now, okay, if I hover over it, we've now got this extra little button underneath. Now remember, when we wasn't doing anything to do with location data or GPS, we just had, like on the simple floor plan, we just had this link button. All right, but now that we're actually introducing GPS, what this one does is telling me it's taking, like this node is taking its data from the floor plan. Now why is that important? Well, what we can do is, if for argument's sake you wanted to position all your nodes and then rescale them and bring it on, because what we can do, and I'll actually show you, if I hold down the shift key, I can select all the nodes. If I hold down the command on the Mac and it's the control on the PC, I can actually move these as a whole. All right, now obviously I can't go out the floor plan because I've got nowhere to go, but then I could have also rotated them as well. So you can actually select all your nodes. Let's just put that back to how it was. Here we go. Right, so yeah, so you can actually select all these. So it's actually important to be able to say, right, okay, if I wanted to, once I've added all my nodes, if I wanted to move the floor plan over, I could deselect this, move the floor plan, but all the nodes remain geolocated. Okay, so yeah, you have these options. We also have another option in the properties panel, where we got anchor GPS to floor plan, and we could actually deselect that. So if we deselected that, we could physically move the floor plan, but on the output it would still be correct because we've not actually changed any of the nodes. Let's go back to user data. We wouldn't have changed any of the longitude and latitude in the node because we've disconnected the fact that the floor plan now has location data. Okay, it's probably a little bit difficult to swallow that one, but there we go. That's what we've got. We can do this. So if you do need to, plonk the nodes on a map and then move them around and move them, you can do that, and then you can choose whether to have the nodes get the GPS from the floor plan or not. So if you decide to move them, it's not going to be a major issue. Okay, all right. Let's have a look at the time. Time is getting on. Right, this is basically, as I say, we're going to build this for a Street View project. So now all I would do is go into the linking mode. I can then do linking. Now we've got sequential, which wouldn't work here. If I select that, you can see that it's putting links all over the place. So let's get rid of that. But what we can do is do linking closest node, and that virtually does what we want. So it links the closest nodes together. All right. If I did the park, which was basically a big circle, then for me doing the sequential linking is the one to do. Anyway, so this is how I would link my nodes up. I would add my second floor level as well, second level. If we close the map and go to the Street View panel, right, what I can do is when I double click, I've got this ground floor. I can give it a name and it's set to level 0, and basically if I've got 2 levels, we can switch between levels as and when Google get it working. So this is, if you like, ready to go for Street View, because what we've done is we've added the nodes using the GPS. But if I was to go to an output and generate an output, all right, hang on, let's put a map in the skin, shall we? So let's just draw a map, shove it in the skin, and this time round what I'm going to do is just go to floor plan, this floor plan 1. All right, so this, I mean, I haven't done the file type of the map, but you can see it's all there. But basically now what I've got is an HTML5 output that's working, and the same project, because we actually used the location data for setting our hotspots and not just drag them into the viewer. This is the data that Street View would need for its linking. You can see that this project now can be quite happily turned into an HTML5 output or uploaded to Street View. Okay, I'm going to stop it here. Next week's one, because of the amount of questions that we were getting to do with maps, what I want to explore next week is a bit of a teaser. Is in the map we can have custom icons. So if you've got like a floor plan of a village, you can put custom icons for where the pharmacist is, where the ATMs are, and all that sort of stuff. And when you hover over a hotspot, you can get the activation in the floor plan, or you click on the map or the floor plan and get the activation on the hotspot. So there's a lot more interaction going on. That's what I want to cover next week. It starts to, that's logic blocks and actions. This was really to get you going on the maps and floor plans. I will cover next week maps. As I say, this has just been floor plans and I've run out of time. It's nearly been an hour. But obviously I want to explore, the Google Maps and the Open Street View and all of that, and we'll cover that next week. Okay, well, I'm going to call in Karen now to see if we've got any questions on what we've been doing. Karen?
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi. So we have quite a few questions.
Right.
And so maybe you can remember about an hour back in time in the tour map.
Right.
And Daniel was asking, and I'm sorry, Daniel, I hope I get the question right. He was wondering what happened. Yeah?
Yeah, go on. Sorry, I'm just changing the project back. Go on.
Okay. So he's asking, I think, what happens if you, don't leave link mode when you're in the tour map? So he's asking, when you're adding links between nodes, you had to click the chain, to in order to turn it on, right? And then you're turning the link from orange to blue. So, but what happens if you don't hit that button? I think that's what he's asking.
So if I leave it linked, if I leave it linked, any node that I click, it will link to it. So I can create new links and I'll just keep on. But the thing is, it lets you know that you've left it on because you get like this tendril sticking out. So it's this tendril's staying with your cursor. So I think you're not going to accidentally leave this on. But yeah, I mean, this is only because I've got, let's get these turned off. As I said before, you've got this switch node in link mode. The default is it turned off. So you select it and only can create one link, and you can't do any more until you turn it off. But with this switch node link mode, then you can actually carry on linking accidentally. But as I say, the mere fact that when it's active, you've got this tendril, I think you're going to notice that you've left it on. I don't think it's something that you can accidentally link on. If that answers the question, I don't know, but yeah.
I hope so. And Daniel still had another question. So it was just a simple observation, I think. Why isn't there a hotspot, or why does a hotspot for going to the upper floor, upstairs, it doesn't appear on the map?
Right, because it's not actually a node. It's just a hotspot between. What's appearing on the maps is the actual panoramas. All right. It's not, and of course we can't have a link, because this is what you're probably saying, is why don't we have a link from B going up to the second floor? Because we're not displaying first floor. So we're on ground floor. We can't physically display the link from ground floor to first floor because I can't see that map pin. So these are actually representing panoramas, and of course all we've done is added a hotspot. And it's the fact that I can't show hotspots linked between levels, that's why you don't see it here. All right. I mean, if we go to second, see this one, you would see that you'd want that link to this A here, and I physically can't, because I can't view the ground floor panorama. You physically can't show the link going to the hall. That should answer that question, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
So Jim has a question, and he's wondering if you can go over PNG size and map size, because he's experiencing fuzziness, anti-alias is what he's calling it, when they're changing the scale and the zoom of the image.
Right, if you're right, okay. Depends how you're changing. If you're actually right, in the first webinar, what we did is we actually put a PNG image into the skin. Okay, in this webinar, what we're doing is putting a floor plan image into the map element. Now, I don't know how this is the problem. I don't know how you're changing the size of it. Now you've used the word scaling. I can only assume that, you know, if you put a map element into the skin and it's, I don't know, 200 by 600 pixels, and you scale it down, you're actually trying to compress the pixels, so it's going to be over sharpened. If you scale it up, you're not going to have enough pixels and it's going to pixelate. Okay, so that's where your anti-aliasing and your pixelation comes from. When we deselected, like when we're using the map element and we physically deselected simple, we are then taking the original size of the map image or the floor plan image, and then we're tiling it and making it multi-resolution. So that would probably be your better way. If you're actually just throwing a scaling action at a map, then you're physically changing the size but not the pixels. If you use this method and deselect simple, we're actually changing the image size. So we're using a smaller image for a smaller viewport, and then we use more tiles and more image for a larger viewport. So that's probably where that's coming from, is the fact that you're scaling it for size rather than changing its physical dimensions. If that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it does. Yes. Okay, so now we've got next question from Tom, and so he's wondering if there's a way for the first floor and the ground floor buttons, and whatever other ones are, if they can be highlighted to remind the viewer which floor they're on. So
yeah, we can. Well, we can do all of that. Basically, what we can do is, let's have a look. I'm not right. Okay, in this, what I'd probably do is I'd use a variable, and when I'm clicking a button, so let's just do that. So let's just put var underscore map. All right, and let's have that. I'll just use true and false. So false would be the ground floor, true would be the first floor. Let's just keep it as that for the second. And then what I can do is when you select ground floor, I'm going to add the action that when mouse click, the variable value var map equals false. All right, let's just copy that. Let's just paste that into the next button up. All right, and this will then turn it to true. So on mouse click, so I've now got a true false going on right in this variable. So what I can now do is go into this text box and say, if we go to the color, that when the variable map equals true, because this is going to be for the first floor, I'm going to change the background color to black. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to change the text color. So let's paste in that expression and change that to white. Okay, so what we'll end up with, let's just see this. Now that we've got the variable going on, if I select the first floor, we've got that, and we come back out. So if I'd have used the same sort of logic here, so I could have changed the colors here. Right, okay, yep, we could have, so this is using a variable, but what we could have also done is, because we've got tags going on, we've got ground floor and first floor, so we've got ground and first tags. Now this would have been easier, sorry. What we could have done is turn and said, let's have a look at that text box. Let's have a look at the background color. What we could have done as well is said, if the tag equals ground, then we could have changed that to black. Okay, again, copy that expression, go to the text color, paste that in and change that to white. Yeah, so this would have been better, so you wouldn't have actually needed to add a variable. Sorry, my brain was all over the place, and I've just seen a quick message from Thomas as well, so thanks Thomas. Yeah, because the project's got tags, we could have done that. So if we'd have just just have a look at the preview. Obviously with the preview we can't see the floor plane coming in. It can't fetch it on the preview, but you can see everything else. So that's obviously using tags, and this one's using yeah, one's using tags, one's using variables. So yeah, there you go. All right, so that should let's have a look at that. So that was the ground floor. That was saying tags contain ground, turn that black. Tags contain ground, turn that white. All right, okay, so yeah, so you can use tags to do this, yeah. So now the thing is, with obviously with the tags, the tag is actually reading the node's panorama. All right, so if we have a look at the output, and what I mean by that is if we change, as I say, we go to first floor, we're still in a panorama with the ground floor tag. If I then click onto a node, we're now in a panorama with a first floor tag, and because it's for first floor, this goes away. So yeah, it depends. I mean, if you want this to react on click, then probably have the variable, but if you want it to like track where you are, because obviously you can use colors to track. I mean, if you had as an example, if I go back to ground floor and select a node there, it's turned black, and even if I go to the first floor, it's telling me that I've got an active node on the ground floor. So yeah, you can do this. You can change, you know, you can use tags or variables, but there are ways that you can change things. Whew. Hope that answered that question.
All right, so there was, I think this goes back also to what Jim was asking about zooming in onto the map. So Simon's asking, if you have a map that's JPEG or PNG, right, the quality when you zoom in is not so nice, right? So is it possible to insert a map as an SVG file or vector or, yeah?
Well, as I say, it depends on how you guys are doing it, because theoretically, just to show you, if I go to the output folder and go to output and go to images, you'll see that I've got map tiles. All right, now I've got lots of different maps in here because we've been playing around, but theoretically, if I've got simple deselected, so let's guess, I'm just going to delete the map folder. All right, and then I'm now going to reproduce the output just to show you what you would end up having if you were just doing this. All right, so let's go back to images. You would have map tiles. Right, okay, this is because it's a single resolution. Bear with me, sorry. Let's deselect simple. So we're now going to multi-resolution. All right, okay, so this is now multi-res on the tiles. I call it multi-res, it's probably the wrong term, but it's doing what multi-resolution does. It's tiling up. So if we go to images, there we go. So we got the two floor plans. So here you've got these levels. So this one, level 7, is at 0. So here is a tile. It's a PNG tile. So there's that floor plan. And as you zoom in further, we get a couple more tiles. And as you zoom right in, it's tiled it up. So theoretically, what you're saying to me is that when you zoom in, if you deselect simple and you're using this method, it shouldn't, because we're taking the actual size and then tiling it down. Now the thing is if you're scaling, all right, which I know what some people do, and if you go to the size and position webinar that we did cover this. There is a difference between changing size and scaling. All right, what this method is doing, this with the simple deselecting, is we're physically changing the size. We've created different size images, and we're producing a size of image which best viewed at your zoom level. All right, but if you've got a single image and you're scaling it, it doesn't matter if it's an SVG or whatever. You know, if you've got an SVG in the skin and it's 200 pixels by 600 pixels, as we said, and I scale that, I'm still going to get the same issues that you had before. Where an SVG differs is I can change the size of an SVG and then it goes back to being sharp. All right. If I change a physical size of a JPEG, I'm not removing or adding any more pixels, so I'm going to get into those issues. If I scale it down, it's going to anti-aliase. If I scale it up, it's going to pixelate. An SVG, if I physically change its size, it's nice and sharp, whichever size you change. But that is not the same as scaling. You know, once I've set a size, that's it. If I then scale it, I'm scaling it up or down with the same amount of pixels, and you'll run into the same problem. But this is what I'm saying. If you deselect the simple in the floor plan, we automatically generate different levels for you. So as you zoom in and out, when you reach a certain level, it will change the tiles and it will keep it as sharp as it possibly can. All right, so that's the thing. The thing there is the difference between resizing and scaling. All right, okay. I hope that was clear. If not, support@gnome.com.
Yeah, okay. So Simon has yet another question, and that one is, how do you make the map image fit into the map? And I can't remember if you covered this or not last week, but I don't think so. So he's asking, how is it possible to make the map image fit the actual map?
Right, so I'm assuming when I'm hearing this, what I'm assuming is make the map image fit the size of the map element, right? Is this what we're asking? Because obviously,
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
No, that's fine. It's fine. Now, as I said before, the actual image is 600 by 115. All right. So when I added that, now this. Right, okay, let's backtrack this. If I set simple, all right, basically what I'm doing here is on the alignment, we can align middle or whatever. Now, what's going to happen is if I just pull this out, all right, and we just have a look at this. No, we're not going to see this. Hold up 2 seconds. Let's just create an output, and let's see it. You see that doesn't fit. Basically what's happened is it's scaled it to fit like top and bottom, but not the width. Okay, now I know that my image was 600, so what I did was I grabbed a map element, all right, and as I said before, what I did was I said, right, it's 600 by 1150, so that's the size of my map. Okay, so what I've done there is I've locked the aspect ratio, right, and I've just resized it down, and that's it. So now the whole thing gets resized automatically inside the map element. Okay, so that's how it's basically going to fill that up. Now if we're talking about with simple deselected, he says, let's go to floor plan and we deselect simple. You're quite right. How does that big map show correctly in here? Well, it's initial zoom. All right. So when we are using this multi-resolution, we've actually got marker boundaries. Okay. Now I know because when we first looked, let's have a look inside the output. All right, and go into images, go into map images, go into the floor plan. I know I've got 4 levels. Now I know this is going to sound a little bit confusing, but if you were to use say like a Google map, level 0 is the whole planet. You can see everything, and I think it goes right up to about 23 and 24 when you're zoomed right in. But of course our floor plan isn't that big, so we're starting the level at 7, 8, 9 and 10. So these are the 11 these are the numbers that fit into that scale. All right, but as Pano 2 VR is concerned, this is 0, 1, 2 and 3. All right, so with that said, all right, if everyone's following me, what I could say is, right, if I go to 0, all right, that would be showing the whole map and zoomed out as far as I could possibly be. All right, so let's just have a look at this, which it is. Boom, done. All right, so that's my first, that's level 0, that's level 1, that's level 2, that's level 3. I've got no more, so I've got those 4 levels. All right, so if I go back to the map element, I could actually change this and say, right, well, I want it not to be at level 2 where it's just a little bit smaller. I want to be at level 3 where it's just that slightly little bit bigger. All right, so let's do that and go into that. And we can control that. It's now just that little bit bigger. All right. So we've got that. All right. So, but what we did is if I take that to 0 and then go down 1, we set marker bounds. And what this does is it tries to get a level. Now, don't forget the levels are stepped. It isn't like it's, you can get right to the pixel. It's actually making the levels at different sizes or stepped sizes. So what marker bounds will do is pick the level where you can see where it will best fit but still see all of the map pins. And in that case, it will be this level. All right, because the next one down is too small and the next one up is too big and you can't see all the map pins. So this is the level it picks when you have marker bounds. Now, when I set these two buttons in zoom out, we also had the option to have a button for marker bounds as well. So it doesn't matter if you've zoomed in too far. If someone could just hit that, you could even call it a map reset and it would then take you back to the bounds. But that's it. So, so how does it fit? Well, if you've got simple selected, it will scale the image to fit inside the map element. That's why I try and keep the map element aspect ratio the same as the image. All right, so that's why I do that. If you've deselected simple, then you have to look at these zoom levels, which just quickly are seen here. So initial zoom, and you can set it. So 0 being the smallest it will be, completely zoomed out, and then the higher the number, the more zoomed in you are. All right, so I think that should answer that one. If not, I overdid it. Sorry.
I think it's anyways helpful and interesting. And so yeah, Daniel, Jim, Simon, we hear you. Just want to let you know we're going to look into bringing in SVGs or vectors in there, and maybe we have an answer next week. Maybe not, but we're going to take a look at it. So let's see. The next question also comes from Simon. And is it possible to set the position of the text box relative to the pin as a fixed parameter?
No, you're going to have to move. Obviously, it's fixed. If we look at the map pin element and just move it over here so we can see it, you can see that it's set. Its position is set. Now, it had a position logic block anyway, because what we did was said as a default that if the device has touch, of course the text box is below it. So if the device has got touch, it automatically moves the text box above the pin. Because if you touch this with your finger, you're covering the text box. So if the device has touch and you're using the touch screen, it moves it up. But you can see we can only do this by either node or tag. We can actually change its position, but there isn't any one where you can say, well, if it's too close to the edge of the screen, will it automatically go over? Now, having said this, in the forum, because I had a long chat with Thomas about this and thought, it's got to be able to be done. And Thomas went, well, of course it can be done. So I was like, of course it can. Anyway, so there is actually a project in the forum where if the text box is above your map pin and it's going too far above the screen, it uses some set code where it will bring it below it. All right, so it will automatically do that, only for top and bottom. Doesn't do it for side to side, but it does work. The only trouble is that the actual movement is actually within the code that's in that project. I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head. I know it's in the forum because I put it in there. Thomas knows it's on the forum because I bugged him about it for helping me put it in there. So yeah, it's definitely in there. But as of now, as of looking at this project, we've got no magic way that's saying if it's getting too close to the edge, can it automatically move? No, we can't. But we can use tags and we can use titles to do that.
Cool, thanks. And this is going to be the last question today. I think it's a short answer. If not, we can answer one more question. But Jim is asking. Oh yeah, I think this is short. Can you start with a Google Map location, then switch to the floor plan using hotspots?
Right, as I said earlier on, the map element, you can either show floor plans or maps. It can't do both. What you would need to do is add 2 map elements, and what you could do at that point is hide and show 2 different map elements. If I select a map element, you'll see that its hard settings is either floor plans or maps. Yeah, we can't change that within a parameter, and it doesn't make sense to. I mean, you know, if you want to, yes, you can do what you want, but you would add 2 map elements. So map element 1, map element 2. You know, map element 1 may show a Google map, and then when you click on a hotspot to go down, you can swap that out for map element 2 and then show all the floor plans and get all the crazy, you know, switching and centering nodes and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, but no, 1 map element is either floor plan or map. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was pretty quick. And this is going to be our very last question today. Mm-hmm. And when you were working on showing the zoom levels, Walter came up with a question. Can you make more zoom levels than 4? Can you have more than 4 zoom levels?
It depends on the size of the input image. Now, we're actually I'm not actually sure what the limits are, what the boundaries are, but it depends on if you had a massive image that was, I don't know, 3,000 by 10,000 images, then it would automatically make more levels. All right. This image was only 600 by 1150, so it only created 4 levels. I don't know what the criteria is, to be honest. That is going to be a Thomas or Christoph question, the 2 programmers. But, you know, it depends on your size. All right. So if the image is small, then it probably won't. Actually, hang on, tell a lie. Mort calling Olsen. Thomas is beaming in on me. He's saying we're using 256 tiles. Right, okay, right. Yeah, we're using 256 pixel tiles. So with that in mind, how many times does your image divide? So it should be divide by 2. So yeah, it basically, if your 256 tiles can fit into your image and how many times it can fit, then that's the amount of levels it's going to roughly create. So yeah, and as this wasn't such a huge project, then, you know, it was very close, like 600 pixels wide was very close to 2 times, or whatever it was, the 256 tile size, therefore I only made 4 levels. So yeah, there is a calculation there, but it's down to your image size. So you can't force that. If your image size, like mine was, you know, 600 wide, then you're only going to get 4. You can't get any more. All right. I think that's done. Sorry.
That's done, and I think that's it for today. It was a long one.
It was. I do apologise. I mean, this started out to be one single webinar on maps. It turned into 2. It's now turned into 3. There's lots of cool things we can do with maps, and yeah, I mean, and I don't want to rush it and try and get you, like, cram it all into one. I'd rather spread it over more, because we can. I mean, it doesn't look like we're going anywhere anytime soon, so yeah, we can afford to do so. But yeah, excellent.
Yeah, but I think today was really helpful. You covered a lot of things, and just to remember, you can all watch the video again and you know, relearn and catch up on what you didn't get. So yeah, thanks Martin for that.
Absolutely, and thank everybody for you know, taking time out your busy schedules. I know you've all got lots to do to see my webinars. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all next week, where we're going to show you some really cool things to do with maps. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll leave it over to Karen to say ta-ta as well.
Yeah, bye. Take it easy.
All right, bye.